students. I am Shantanu Ghosh, currently posted at Department of English, Government Niranjan K. Sharwani College, Utah. I am here to discuss with you a novel called David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. And before we look into this novel, let me tell you something about this novel that is very interesting. A renowned critic, Hugh Walker, once said the pen which wrote David Copperfield was often dipped in his own blood. So what he was referring at the fact that this novel was highly autobiographical. Charles Dickens, a Victorian novelist who was born in the year 1820 near Portsea, and he was considered the most representative Victorian novelist. You all know Victorian age was a complex age and Dickens was a novelist with a purpose. His focus was to mirror his age in all his glorious manifold contradictions. And to understand his work, we need to form an idea of the England of his day. David Copperfield is an important work of fiction because, as I was telling you, it is an autobiographical novel. Not only the incidents but also the characters of this novel bear a close resemblance to the novelist's real life, his friends and acquaintances. And this novel was published in a serial from May 1849 to November 1850. And it has a wide range, gives it a panoramic picture of the Victorian society, especially the lower classes of the city of London. Dear students, this novel is extremely popular. Even Dickens said once, of all my books I like this the best. And you'll see that this book happens to be in the curriculum of schools and colleges alike across the globe. Its popularity is due to the fact it's highly interesting and entertaining. The characters of this novel have a great variety and vitality, and how Dickens has depicted them, it's very vivid. See, I said that you need to understand Victorian age before we look into this. One important aspect of this novel perhaps is why in the first place the novelist wrote this novel. Because you see, apart from being entertaining the reader, Dickens had one particular objective, aim in his mind, that it's a novel of social reform. Dickens wrote this novel at a social purpose, just in order to show the prevailing conditions of contemporary England. Dickens is a novelist of London life, and his novel David Copperfield reflects his criticism of the social conditions prevalent in the contemporary England. It is also a critique on the condition of factory workers and their suffering. It refers to child labor and its plight. Even the protagonist, the main character of the novel that we are about to discuss, David Copperfield, himself worked manually as a child. This novel also refers to the coarseness and brutality of the age, unjust laws, cruelty at schools, and schools being only profit-making machinery. It also indicates that aristocracy back then was corrupt and degenerate. So, in a way, this novel happens to be a documentation of the social conditions of the England and a plea for social reform. Now, I am going to narrate to you the plot summary of this novel in a capsule, but I would always suggest you to go through the original text with the help of PDFs that are widely available in the net. So, the narrator in this novel happens to be David Copperfield himself. It's a story when a grown-up person is narrating his own story, and the narration is in first person. We are told that David, the protagonist, was born after 6 months after his death of his father, and on the night of his birth, his great aunt Betsy Trotwood came to his house hoping that the baby would be a girl, but she was disappointed when a son was born. David was brought up with great love and affection by his mother, but this happiness is short-lived as his mother marries a second time. His stepfather, a harsh and cruel man called Murdstone. He is often ill-treated, abused, beaten by this man, Murdstone, his stepfather, and his life becomes miserable and wretched. One day, unable to bear the miseries and merciless thrashing by Murdstone, he bit his finger, and as a punishment, he was sent to Mr. Grakel's school called Salem House. In Salem House, he had to face humiliation because a placard was hung on his neck and on which these words were written, "Take care of him, he bites." He makes friends there, and those days become somewhat bearable to him. But during his second term at school, on his birthday, he is given the sad news that of the death of his mother. After her funeral, he spends some happy days, rather a fortnight, at Yarmouth with his nurse, Miss Peggotty, and his family. On his return home, he was told that he would have to earn his own living. He goes to London to take up a job of washing bottles. Here he meets an easygoing, a good-for-nothing fellow, Mr. Micawber, who was head over heels in debt and consequently was arrested for debt and put in Marshalsea prison. Now David decides to run away to his grand aunt, Miss Betsy Trotwood, and after great difficulties, he arrives at Dover to his aunt Betsy, who receives him kindly and treats him well. There he was sent to Dr. Strong's Academy at Canterbury, and his lodging arrangements are done with Mr. Wakefield, Mrs. Betsy's lawyer. There he meets his young and beautiful daughter, Agnes, who becomes his friend, supporter. There is another character called Uriah Heep, a clerk in Mr. Wakefield firm who had evil designs on the firm as well as Agnes. He wants to be the partner of that firm and he wants to marry Agnes. On completion of his studies, he gets an apprenticeship with the firm Spinlow and Joking. During a visit home of Mr. Spinlow, he falls in love with his daughter, Dora Spinlow, and marries her. His marriage is an unhappy one, as Dora is immature and incapable of managing home. In the meantime, Uriah Heep becomes partner in Mr. Wakefield's firm and engages Mr. Micawber as a clerk who discovers that Heep had forged the signatures of Mr. Wakefield on certain documents. So, Mr. Uriah Heep is exposed and handed over to the law enforcement agencies. At the end, we come to know that Dora, David's wife, dies after short illness. He is shattered and shocked. But on that juncture, Agnes comes to his rescue, and on Agnes's advice, he travels abroad. And on his return to England after 3 years, he marries Agnes and lived happily ever after. This is, in fact, the brief plot summary of the novel. And in the second part of my video, I'll be dealing with certain questions and textual problems that are really important from the point of view of not only understanding this novel properly, but also from the point of view of the questions that are asked in the university examinations.